Right, this is a project, or part of the project, that I've been dreading for some time. The crankshaft. This is the stock they supply. I've got to cut 1.5 inches off of the end, which forms this piece, and the rest of it will go through in one. Now they show these two little fillets there, which aren't going to happen, of course, purely because I won't be able to fit it together if I do it like that, unless that's the fillet of the braze that's then turned down. I can understand this one because I can leave it larger than 1/2 inch, because what I'll do, let's say this is the end piece, the 1.5 inches there. I'm going to leave 3/4 in the centre, turn the outside edges down to 1/2 inch, and then I can sandwich these pieces on, and that will give me my required 3/4 inch in the centre. Same applies to the bigger bit. I will leave 3/4 inch in the centre at full dimension, which I think is about, let's not think, let's have a look, which is 5/8. So the full dimension is 5/8, so I'll turn it down to 1/2 inch apart from the last 3/4 in the centre, and then that will set me up a nice datum to press this together, and then I can braze it on. But these are the two plates they send for the balance weights. So what I'm planning on doing at the moment is to just put them in the lathe, face them off, face that one off, then I can sandwich them together and probably set them up in the mill, find the centre, drill out the centre 1/2 inch hole, and then another one 1 inch up, and then while it's still in the mill I can do these offset angles, because the important thing is, I know probably the quickest way is just to hacksaw them off, but got to make sure they're exactly right either side to make sure the balance is correct. So let's assume we've got these two faces machined off now. They're set up on the crankshaft, and then what I'll do is I'll set the crankshaft up between centres, which is how I'm going to do both of these between centres, to keep the concentricity. So once they're set up at me 3/4 in the centre and all brazed together, I'll put them back in the lathe, and I'll turn the outside. I know it's going to be an interrupted cut once I cut this out, but I'll just true up the outside relative to the crankshaft going through, and also I will face off the insides down to the dimension, because they're slightly over dimension. Even when I've faced off one side, they'll still be slightly over, but the face side will be on the inside, and then on the outside I can machine them down to the required dimension. I mean, that might even give me the chance for this little piece here. It's not so important there, but it is here, because that's where the bearing goes for the conrod, which is fine because I will have the surplus material there to form that one, but I'm not too worried about these two. So first process for me is to face off the two discs. I'll take these over, face those off, work out how I'm going to set them up in the mill to get these drilled and get this part machined out. Then I will be going over to the lathe to sort these two crankshafts out. Well, it's one crankshaft to sort out the main crank and the conrod crank. So anyway, first job, over to the lathe, get these discs faced off. Right, take two. Right, I can see what's going to happen here. There's no way that's going to grip on that, is it? Or is it? Oh, it is. need to be careful of here, I think, is if I come in like that, it's going to catch the jaws, so I'm going to have to just turn this at an angle. Right, let's go. Not the best finish in the world, but it's okay. Right, that'll be the mating surface for the other disc now. What I want to do, I'm just going to flip it round, because if I now just face that off, that'll give me a centre mark for when I line it up to drill. Right, that's still got some saw marks on it, so I know that that's the outside now. You see that? Will now give me a centre so I can line that up on the mill when I drill it. Right, those two mate up quite nicely now. Turn that light off and put a torch on, I'll be able to see that better, I think. We're on the money there, we're on the centre, good. Right, lock that off. Right, just putting a little pin in there just to stop it from moving. It shouldn't move, but that will just keep that hole aligned while I drill the next one. I go an inch in that direction, so let's get that moved an inch in the Y direction. Right, exactly 1 inch in the Y direction and locked off. Right, let's put another little pin in there. Now that's going to keep my alignment. Right, what I've got is this pointy sort of countersink bit. I'm going to try and mark it out with that if I've got enough room. I need 1 3/4 is 3/8. Yeah. While I've got the X mark there, I'm going to put this in and try and scribe the lines with the countersink bit. Right, now got the vertical lines scribed on and some horizontal lines. I need to come 15 degrees off of the horizontal line, so I'm going to take it out of the vise and mark that with the scriber. Perfect. Right, there are two 15-degree marks. I suppose I could set it up in the rotary table with a lot of faffing about to mark this out, but I've achieved what I need to anyway. So what I want to do now is get this bit rough cut, and then what I shall do is I'll use these two pieces here to sit that parallel back in the vise. I can then fine mill that off and then rotate it 15 degrees to fine mill this line. It'll all become clear soon. So let's just get the vise cleaned up, get this rough cut out on the bandsaw. Right, that's the basic shape. I'm now going to put it back in the mill and clean these up. Not necessarily down to the line, but I'm going to be able to measure from this centre point because I've got these pins in, but I'll show you that when we get over to the mill. What I'm going to do now is set my Z-axis down onto this feeler gauge. Right, now that's 0.05 above there. So if I zero my Z-axis and come down, move that out, come down 0.5, lock that off. Right, zero that out. Right, I've now zeroed that out. The bottom of the cutter now is touching there. Well, it's not touching there, but it is in reality. The measurement is touching there. So what I need to do now is come up 250. that's exactly 250 up now. So the bottom of my cutter now is centre of the pin, or the pins, right? And I need to come up 375 is my finished dimension. So if I now zero the z-axis, come up another 375. There we go, 375. Zero the z-axis again, and I now know that when I get to that measurement I will be exactly where the correct height on there. So let's just have a look, see how it looks compared to the scribe line, shall we? Right, you can't see that, but I can, and I can see that that is bang on the scribe line, 375. So if I set the angle block on there, get my torch out, I can see them here. Right, by putting the light behind there, putting the angle block on there, which is then 15 degrees, I can set this at 15 degrees, which will then give me the angle, the 15 degrees I need here to mill this down to the line. I've got a scribe line on there, so I can mill down to the scribe line. Right, I've got a height of 320. Got a height of 320 from there, so if I machine this down to 320 it'll match the other side. Right, that's pretty much finished as far as I can go from the milling anyway. Eventually what will happen is when it's mounted on the crank through this centre pin, I'll turn it between centres to turn this circumference so it's all true, everything can be true, and also when it's on the crank, these have got to be turned down to dimension. They're too sort of fat at the moment, so they've got to be turned down to dimension. That's all folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button. I would also appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button, because that will enable me to grow the channel so that I can keep making these videos. Please leave a comment or a question. I do read all of the comments and reply to as many as I can. Thanks for watching.